Love. This final chapter of Book 1, A Search for God, was chosen 2 months before the original study group was to even begin working on the lesson. It was during the group's 38th reading that Edgar Cayce offered a glimpse of what was to come. While in that state from which he gave readings, Cayce said, "The culmination of this series of lessons will be love. For he so loved the world as to give his Son, his self, that man should come to the realization of the oneness of the Father in the earth." While giving this reading, Cayce had a dream. In fact, on a number of occasions, as he regained normal consciousness after a reading, his conscious mind would remember a dream, even though he didn't remember anything that had been said during the reading. In this particular instance, the dream had a powerful effect on Edgar Cayce, because in it he had seen himself speaking face-to-face with the Master. It was an experience given to him, the group later found out, in the hope that the readings themselves might somehow give life to this lesson of love, the very lesson Jesus had represented and presented so perfectly in Galilee. Now there is clearly a strong correlation between the concept of oneness from the previous chapter and the great commandment of love. We read in the New Testament, "Hear, O Israel," that is, seekers of the way, "the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." The great commandment is about love in its highest form. It isn't merely affection or passion, because it's of God, and it's creative. It isn't possessive or conditional. It's never jealous or insecure. In fact, the law of love is one of giving out the very best that is within us, with no thought of receiving something in return. From the Search for God material, we know that this supreme love, divine love, surpasses our own human understanding. But even though we may not be able to really comprehend it, we can see it manifested in the lives of a few special people. The Buddha exemplified this love in his philosophy of the middle way. He taught that each of us can begin living in such a manner that there is a balance between the needs of the body and the needs of the soul, while at the same time making no distinction between the way we might treat the higher and the lower classes. In a similar way, Jesus was equally at home in the presence of Jews and Samaritans. He was himself around both those who loved him and those who wished him dead. He accepted among his followers men of wealth and poverty. He was found in the company of the priest Nicodemus and the tax collector Matthew. In his presence, even a prostitute might be treated as the holiest of women. In the 13th century, St. Francis of Assisi was able to disassociate himself from the world as an object of his interest. He truly managed to be in the world and yet not of the world. He gave up his wealthy position in the city of his birth and walked naked into the wilderness. For the rest of his life, he was no longer blinded by the apparent differences between individuals. In his relations with others, be they pope, nun, beggar, sultan, or robber, he treated all individuals as if they were kings. Amidst the great poverty and sickness of Calcutta, Mother Teresa claims that the most devastating disease which any human being can suffer is to be unloved. Her work is not so much the building of a place where people can come to die in dignity, or a place where children might have a home, as it is an atmosphere where individuals can experience, often for the very first time, what it means to be loved. She gains strength in her work because she has found that for her, every single person is God. In a remarkable book entitled Initiation by Elizabeth H., we can find the same theme, which is so beautifully exemplified in the lives of these individuals. She writes, "Just as the sun shines, sending its loving radiations with perfect impartiality on the beautiful and the ugly, the good and the evil, the true and the false, without discrimination and with perfect impartiality, the highest kind of love of all, divine love, is the perfect impartial love. It must be a matter of complete indifference to you whether a thing or a person is beautiful or ugly, good or bad, true or false. You must love them all with the same love. In other words, it's a consciousness of oneness which is the real basis for divine love. If we look at love as a state of mind instead of merely an expression of emotion, we can see how this consciousness begins to find meaning in our relationships with God, with our neighbor, and even with ourselves. Why does the Great Commandment ask us to love God first? Perhaps if we can truly learn to love God, then everything else might somehow fall into place. The Casey readings make it clear that the purpose of life is to let the love of God manifest itself through us in the earth. Love is law. Law is love. God is love. Love is God. In fact, the whole law is fulfilled in these three words. Love is God. Love is as universal as God. It is everywhere, and it is eternal. During those moments when we're truly manifesting a love for God, we will experience every living being as an expression of the Creator. Love may be seen in a baby's smile, in a rose as its unfolding growth becomes an expression of beauty. Love may be seen in a friendship that gives no thought of self. If we are truly able to love God, then we will be able to love ourselves and others. The affirmation for this chapter is a request to begin to experience this in our own lives. Our Father, through the love that Thou hast manifested in the world through Thy Son, the Christ, make us more aware of God is love. In this affirmation, we are asking that the Christ consciousness might begin to awaken within us, for divine love makes us aware of the presence of the Father's love within each one of us. When Jesus said, "A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another, even as I have loved you," we become aware of the importance of having reverence for life, not just our own, but all life. For example, when you are able to truly love another individual in selflessness, then that person's relationship with self becomes more important than the relationship with you. To set that kind of priority in trying to love someone is an extraordinary expression of caring and reverence for another soul. The Casey readings express this in greater detail. Love ye one another, and thus fulfill the law of God, for God is love. Let love be without dissimulation, that is, without possession, but as in that manner as He gave, love one another, even as I have loved you, willing to give the life, the self, for the purpose, for an ideal. Each of us needs to begin to live in such a way that we know that we are our brother's keeper. Who is our brother? Who is our sister? Everyone who is in the earth is our brother and sister, and we each become responsible for how we answer the call to this relationship. There is the imprint of the Creator on every single individual in the earth. With this in mind, it becomes clear what Jesus was talking about when He said, "As much as you have done it unto one of these, the least of my brethren, you have done it unto me." Many study groups have tried a simple exercise when they begin working with this principle of love of neighbor. It works like this. The next time you are in a crowded hallway, or getting aboard an elevator, or walking through a library, or in the aisles of a grocery store, instead of giving in to the tendency that we all have to look away when we see another person approaching, make eye contact, perhaps even offer a smile or a greeting. Along with the eye contact, you might want to simply affirm silently to yourself, "Child of God, I salute the light of God within you." You may be surprised at how many positive reactions you receive just by acknowledging another's presence, even if it's only on a subconscious level. In a similar fashion, love of others can be expressed simply by successful listening, not worrying about trying to answer all the problems someone might have, but instead just finding the time to listen fully to another person. Often, by receiving this gift of listening, people may begin to find the answers within themselves. but it takes a great deal of commitment, discipline, and love to be truly present with another person in this way. It is a frequent human tendency to either turn the conversation to focus on your own opinions and past experiences, or to feel obliged to talk prematurely and offer solutions. As more than one spiritual teacher has pointed out, the greatest psychic gift of all may be in knowing when to keep your mouth shut. According to the Casey material, Jesus gave inner expression to the ideal of love of neighbor with these two affirmations: "Others, Lord, others," and "He who would be the greatest must be the servant to all." But even though the love of others is crucial to a love-filled life, it is possible only when balanced by love of self. For many of us, the most difficult lesson to learn is to love ourselves. The Casey readings state that the initial step in improving every one of our relationships, family, friends, even enemies, is to begin to learn to love and understand ourselves better. At first, this may seem difficult because we may not feel worthy of love. An honest, sincere look at ourselves will probably reveal all kinds of things that we have done which cut us off from our own love. It happens when we judge ourselves. But remember that we can only condemn ourselves. It is never God. God loves us with an unconditional love, regardless of who we are or what we might have done. His love cannot be earned. It is not conditional, because it is never lacking. But if we condemn ourselves, we are loving ourselves conditionally. As the Casey readings put it, it is not how often we have failed that's important, but instead it's whether we have sought out again the unconditional love God has for us and which we can have for ourselves. There is within every individual the potential to be whole and to know love. That potential is like a pattern which is imprinted on the mind of the soul, waiting to be awakened by the will. But in order to change toward this potential, we must first accept where we are. If we continue to hold against ourselves the deeds of the past, then we keep ourselves from growth. So how can we begin to look at ourselves in a positive, loving light in order to really see who we are? One thing we might do is to take an inventory of ourselves, our abilities, talents, and strengths. This exercise is not designed to deny our faults and weaknesses. But if we can nurture self-appreciation and self-love first, then it may allow us to see the other side of ourselves in a more constructive, hopeful way. Make a written list of the most significant positive things you know about yourself. It will help you to be able to look at yourself lovingly and objectively. Casey might call this starting at the point where you are. For example, you might find yourself listing things like this: a good listener, able to express myself through music, a good parent, a good cook, able to handle new situations with relative ease. Put on your list anything of this nature that you know about yourself, or that other people have noticed and have mentioned to you. In addition, you might want to write down all those things you would like to nurture in yourself, your desires and hopes. And finally, your list might include some of those positive, loving things you can do for yourself, not selfishly, but with the idea that as you help yourself, you'll be better able to love other people. For example, taking time each week to read an uplifting book can inspire you. Finding the time for a balanced approach to diet and exercise so that your physical body will have the best chance to deal successfully with the stresses and challenges of trying to love others. Or, from the spiritual side, making a sincere effort to find a time for daily prayer and meditation. The Casey readings state that he that would know the way must be oft in prayer, joyous prayer. And it's in meditation that we can experience the true love of the divine. It is just by finding the time to become quiet and listen that we make it possible to become channels for the love of God in the earth. In ancient Hindu thought, there are 3 paths available to every individual. ways that will lead away from the wheel of karma to eventual spiritual liberation from the earth. The steepest path is the way of knowledge. On this path, we can work with the self and with education in an effort to embody all that can be and all that ever has been known. The second path is one of devotion. Here, the guiding principle throughout life is one of love and honor toward God. Finally, the third path is one of good works, in which the primary goal is to help others while remaining obedient to the customs and laws of society. But which of these paths is the most desirable? 3 paths, each equally important in Hindu philosophy, each possessing the potential for eventual spiritual enlightenment of the soul. Perhaps we'll find that real love toward God, toward our neighbor, and toward ourselves is possible only when we value the 3 paths equally. The deepest challenge of loving comes from the integration of loving methods made possible by our head, heart, and action. Anything less than this harmony of the 3 leaves us with only a partial picture of the meaning of love. From many spiritual philosophies, we can find other principles about how loving works. Some of these principles emphasize the role which our consciousness may play in attracting the experience of love to ourselves. For example, we can learn that only that which we're willing to give away is really ours to keep. Another principle is that if we would have friends, we must be friendly. If we would have love, let us show ourselves loving. To become love, we must begin to live in a loving manner. This undergirding principle of like attracts like is extremely important when we're trying to work on our ability to love both ourselves as well as those around us. The A Search for God material contains what is perhaps the most challenging principle. Unless we're able to love our own worst enemy, then we haven't even begun to develop. It's also a great learning device. Remember that the reading state often that a fault which we find so disturbing in someone else is merely a reflection of the same problem we've overlooked in ourselves. For example, suppose you think someone talks too much, maybe appearing overbearing or like a gossip. If you can look at yourself objectively, you might see the same tendency in you, although you may not think it's as blatant in you or expressed in the same way. Or consider another example. Have you ever had difficulty with someone at work or with a neighbor, and then moved to a new job and new community, only to find the same irritating difficulty pops up in the new setting, but with a different person? A principle is clearly being illustrated in this kind of experience. What often blocks us from loving relations with others is at least in part due to things in ourselves which we unconsciously drag into each new relationship. This is what the Bible is referring to when it says, "How can you behold the mote that is in your neighbor's eye when you've ignored the beam that is in your own?" On the other hand, the same principle can state that those positive qualities that we see in other people are also inside of us. Perhaps we haven't developed the positive trait to the same extent the other person has, but it's there, and it's a part of us. What a tremendous tool this can be to help us find additional things about ourselves which make self-appreciation and self-love easier. Let's try right now a specific exercise to enhance love, something that makes use of the principles just covered. Pick someone with whom you are having a difficult relationship. Then, take a moment to think about the ideal relationship you would like to have with that person. For example, maybe you'd like a close friendship or a cooperative, congenial work relationship of mutual trust. Then, get a pen and a piece of paper to make a list of all those feelings and actions that would be yours if this ideal relationship came into being. Pause the tape and do this now. The spiritual law that you are going to work with next is like attracts like. Your discipline is to do all those things you can do to give this ideal relationship a chance. Start applying and living the items on your list. Remember the rule stated in the Casey readings. In the application of something comes the awareness of its truth. Try this exercise for 2 weeks and watch the results. See if you and the other person start to change. Despite the busyness of our lives, we cannot afford to skip efforts such as that exercise offers to us. Despite the demands and expectations of material life, only love really matters. Remember that unless we can truly love, although we may have all manner of other possessions, our life means nothing. As one Casey reading puts it, the children of light first love. For though I may have the gift of prophecy, though I may speak in unknown tongues, though I give my body to be burned, and have not the Spirit of the Son of Man, the Christ consciousness, the Christ Spirit, I am nothing. For the children of light know him. He calleth each by name. Or, as it is stated in the famous passage from 1 Corinthians, chapter 13. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And now abideth faith, hope, love, these three, and the greatest of these is love. These are inspiring words, undoubtedly ones that can lift our hopes and renew our spirits to be more loving. Some days we are successful. Perhaps it's because we are around loving people that day, or because we find an inner strength to be loving in spite of difficult people. Probably nothing is more challenging to our efforts to love than to be around someone whose actions we despise. Yet the Casey readings ask us to try to find the seed of something loving and beautiful, even in what we are most inclined to reject. No one should be exempt from our love, or else we will be attempting to surround a part of our minds with darkness, a place where love and healing cannot abide. The holiest of all the spots on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. There's a simple exercise which we can all use as an attempt to heal a relationship with others. Let's close our eyes and spend a minute or two applying it. Search your mind for all those people whom you haven't forgiven. It does not matter how much you have not forgiven them. You've either forgiven them entirely or not at all. It may be that every single person that you don't like is someone to whom you might offer forgiveness. As each individual comes to mind, with eyes closed, offer them a prayer of forgiveness, speaking silently or aloud, God is the love in which I forgive you, and repeat their name. Do this with each person. When you have finished, take a moment and offer the one who needs your forgiveness most of all, saying, God is the love in which I forgive myself. With your eyes still closed, listen to what is told in Baird Spalding's Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. Love is the greatest healing force in the world. Love never fails to meet every demand of the human heart, every sorrow, every infirmity, every harsh condition, and every lack. Love searches out the arid spots of the human heart, the waste places of life, and with a seeming magic touch redeems humanity and transforms the world. Love is God, eternal, limitless, changeless, going beyond all vision. Love is ever seeking an inlet whereby it may flow forth into the soul of man. Love is the perfect fruit of the Spirit. It goes forth, binding up the wounds of humanity, drawing nations into closer harmony, and bringing peace and prosperity to the world. It is the very pulse of the world, the very heartbeat of the universe. Then slowly begin to bring your attention back, and gradually open your eyes. In closing, let us remember that love is the force that lifts us up and inspires all of humanity. The greatest service that any soul might offer another in the earth is to express love to our neighbor, whether that person be next door or on the other side of the world. How can you begin to claim the healing force of love in your own life? It almost always involves the little things of life. Taking time to appreciate and love yourself, going the next step and acting on that genuine self-love. It also means seeing other people in a new way, putting aside fear, forgiving, hearing cries for love that at face value seem to say the opposite. Acting on your vision of love in that relationship, even if the other person hasn't started acting that way yet. And most important, you claim the power of love for your life by accepting the unconditional love which God offers you. As the Casey readings point out, there is no greater statement than that God so loved his creation that he gave to us his only Son, that we might be redeemed and renewed. That kind of love is offered to us individually each day.